Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Ronna. It is nice to be back after a summer off, and it is election season. So today my guests are not candidates from New London, Green Party candidates from our neighboring town, Waterford. And the Waterford Green Party is a relatively new party, but they've been very active over the last year and a half or so in town. So welcome Baird Welch-Collins, who is running for RTM 2nd District.
That is correct, yep.
And Dr. Billie G. Colins, who is running for the Board of Selectmen. So,
thank you.
And I guess I want to start, I live in New London, and I did live in Waterford for many years, but can you explain the form of government and what the Board of Selectmen does, and also what the RTM does? You can do it in whichever order you want.
All right, well, I'll start. I'll give kind of the general overview. Waterford has the very stereotypical New England style of government where we have a first selectman, then a board of selectmen, and then various town legislatures, so the RTM, Board of Finance, that sort of thing. Essentially, the RTM makes town ordinances, and they approve budgets and appointments and that sort of thing. And the Board of Selectmen acts as the executive body.
So it's kind of a three-person executive, but with one executive above the other two.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and so you're running for RTM, which is the legislative body.
Correct, yes. I'm running for RTM from the 2nd District, which is Quaker Hill and that area.
Okay, and you are running for Board of Selectmen.
That's correct.
Okay, I've seen campaign signs for First Selectmen and Board of Selectmen. What's the relationship there?
Well, as I understand it, the principal selectman is, of course, the equivalent of the mayor, basically. And the rest of the selectmen act as advisors. And of course, we all vote on issues and make decisions collectively. But
Now, there are other Green Party candidates who couldn't be here today, but I think we should let people know who they are and what they're running for.
Yes. There is Kevin Kelly, who's running for the Board of Education. There is Deb Roselli Kelly, who's running for RTM in District 3. And then there is Josh Kelly, who's running for the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate.
Now, do any of the elected boards and commissions have minority representation rules, or could it be all Republicans on the RTM and all Democrats?
I am not sure. I don't believe there are minority representation rules.
Yeah. Waterford, unlike New London, is not a single-party town, though.
Right.
I haven't looked at the numbers, but I'm guessing that the number of registered Republicans and Democrats is fairly balanced.
It is, yes.
You know, New London is something like 7,000 to 1,000 Democrats to Republicans. So without minority representation, you really are in danger of having like a city council with 7 Democrats on it. I don't think that's ever happened in Waterford.
No, that's never been a problem in Waterford. There's a good diversity.
And zoning board of appeals is probably the same. It's just whoever is elected.
Right, yeah.
I guess the next question is, why are you running, and what do you hope to accomplish in Waterford?
well, there are several issues that are of concern to me. I guess the first on my list would be transparency. There have been decisions made recently, as I understand it, that did not involve consultation with the parties affected or with the community at large. I'm referring specifically to fire department decisions and transfer of principals from Goshen and Quaker Hill to other regions of the town without consulting the people or the firemen involved. And I'd like to see more transparency concerning these kinds of issues.
Now, you mentioned the fire department, and once again, in Waterford, it's organized very differently from in New London because there are quite a few volunteer firemen involved, right?
Yes.
And you also have a lot bigger area to cover.
Right, yeah, there's multiple departments.
Yeah, so how many firehouses are there around town? There's Quaker Hill, Goshen,
There's Quaker Hill, Goshen, I think
Jordan.
there's at least 5.
Yeah.
There might be 6, that's my understanding.
I think so.
Yeah, we are the only candidates calling for the formation of a public safety commission, which is a new thing in Waterford. And we're doing so, this relates to the firemen, but also to the police department, because we feel that it's a good idea to have a board of citizens independent of both the town government and those two groups, to not only act as a responsible party, making sure they receive adequate but not excessive funding, but also making sure to facilitate communication between public safety officials in the town.
Well, I imagine that one of the things you'd be thinking about too is preventive measures.
Right.
In terms of fire department, sure, you want your fire departments to be staffed and funded, but it's good to have enough inspectors in the office so that we don't have a lot of fires.
Right, yeah, public safety is very important, and taking any steps we can to improve fire safety, but just generally around the town, making sure that we're prepared for infrastructure failures or storm situations. That's very important as well.
Now, you mentioned infrastructure, I think, in your platform
Yes.
as well. I lived in Waterford in the 80s, and the town was pretty flush with money then,
Yes.
and did a lot of building and expanding. And I'm guessing now, 25 years later, there's been a wear cycle.
Yes.
So what would you say are the key issues that have to be addressed related to, rejuvenating the town infrastructure?
You addressing me on that one?
Either one.
Okay. Well, it seems to me that a lot of streets have deteriorated. In fact, there's been a recent report to that effect. I think they said it would cost something like $600,000 a year to improve the roads. We clearly need to start work on that, and using permeable surfacing, it seems to be a good way to go. There was a second issue that just slipped my mind here.
Well, in terms of the roads, they have started work on the roads, but for some reason it's begun right now in the fall, and it seems as though it's going to carry on into the spring and create a hazardous situation over the winter. That's a situation that you want to avoid. In terms of the town having money, we do have money. We have the money necessary to improve the infrastructure, but the government is reluctant to spend that money because we owe so much money on the new schools that were built.
Yes.
Theoretically speaking, we could spend all of the money we have in surplus and still keep paying off the schools, but it's safe, and I agree, it's a good idea to keep some money in reserve. But that's still no excuse for not spending the proper amount of money to adequately improve the infrastructure at the appropriate time of year.
And when you mentioned $600,000 a year to keep the infrastructure in good shape, that seems like a pretty reasonable amount. I know that in New London we've been recommending $1 to $3 million a year.
Right.
Of course, we have a much older infrastructure than Waterford, but it's also more compact. So it doesn't seem like $600,000 would be as big a budget item as would be daunting for a town like Waterford.
Yes, I would also like to see more of our electrical system, our grid, placed underground so that it's not, so that people aren't deprived of power in case of storms. We're apparently going to have more and larger storms in the future, and it would be nice to prepare in advance rather than after the fact for that kind of thing.
And preparing for flooding as well is a really important issue in Waterford, because there are a lot of areas where the outdated infrastructure on roads and even along the coast isn't prepared to handle massive amounts of rainfall. We see flooding time and again. It gets into people's basements, it causes property damage, it destroys roads. And these are repairs that the town could spend money to make now, or we could wait, and it could keep costing us more and more money as it progresses.
Right, and I'm guessing if the town has a risk manager, that person would want to see investment now to avoid possible costs later.
Right.
Which would be a lot bigger.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned permeable surfaces. I know there was a residential development in Waterford that was built a couple years ago that treats all the stormwater on site. Do you see stormwater and runoff as big issues in Waterford?
Yeah, stormwater runoff is a big issue anywhere along the coast, especially around the Sound. That's constantly in danger from, nutrient runoff and that sort of thing. Permeable surfaces are good in some areas and impractical in others, but I think that when we're conducting repairs in the low traffic areas where permeable surfaces are applicable, we should be using them because, when the water sits on regular asphalt, it freezes in the winter, it cracks it, we have to keep repairing it. When it sits on a permeable surface, it goes right down through it. You don't get that same upheaval, the cracking and breaking of the roadway. So it's more cost expensive initially, but, long term, it's much more effective.
And better for the environment too. You mentioned on the Sound and in New London, stormwater spilling into the Thames River is a major pollution issue.
Yes.
Now, what other platform issues do you have? Infrastructure sounds like a good thing to be talking about. What other things do you want to do in town?
Do you want to talk about education?
Well, I've been on the record for some time as being opposed to Common Core, and there's a growing outcry against it in various states around the nation. But primarily what people are concerned with and what I'm concerned with is excessive testing. It seems to me that our students are spending an exorbitant amount of time, and our teachers too, preparing for various kinds of tests. We need to minimize testing. Not do away with it, obviously, but to cut it down so that there's actually more time for teaching and learning and less time spent preparing for examinations.
And you have some education in your background, right?
I do, yes.
On the teaching side. Have you found in Waterford that the testing, which is restricted to certain subjects, English, math, social studies, has it constricted the curriculum in general in Waterford schools, or are students still getting art, music, and physical education?
Well, that's one issue that concerns me. I think we need to put more money into art and music. Life consists of more than just having a job and making a living, and the ability to appreciate music and art is, I think, an important part of a happy existence and a good life. So I'd like to see more money put into that kind of thing. But you were about to say something?
Yeah, what concerns me with the standardized testing is that we're trying to redefine what success means. And I think that success is still a well-rounded education that encompasses the arts, encompasses the sciences, everything. So, while I don't necessarily think that the standardized testing at the moment is pushing in on the arts and that sort of thing, I think within the classroom itself, the new curriculums that are necessary to prepare students for this testing don't allow the teachers any freedom, to explore topics in depth, to look at what the students are interested in, or to be flexible with their different learning styles. And that's really what bothers me.
And that's a good point, because when you mention in depth, because music education has been demonstrated to improve students' math ability in the long term.
True.
And it isn't direct, it might not reflect in the tests, but it does reflect in their overall grasp of the material.
Yes.
So I feel like there are the testing is encouraging some short-range strategies to do well in the test, whereas longer-range strategies that will create people who even know more about the topics being tested might diminish in the classroom.
Absolutely.
Now, I know there is, Kevin Kelly is running for Board of Education. To what extent in Waterford can the RTM or the Board of Selectmen affect what happens in the schools? No, I don't really understand Waterford government that well.
There is a limited amount of control, especially from the RTM. The Board of Selectmen would have more influence, but the Board of Education has a lot of power to influence what happens in the schools. And getting actual educators on the Board of Education, like Kevin Kelly, I think is very important. I've known him for a long time. He's extremely qualified. I would very much like to see him, especially with his background in education, in multiple, venues. I'd love to see that new mindset brought to the Board of Education.
Now, how many members of the Board of Education are there? How many total seats are there?
I'm not exactly sure. There are
Okay.
several. There's about a dozen, I believe.
Oh, yeah, and probably, I'm guessing, not too many teachers at this point.
I don't know of any. I mean,
Oh.
there might be one or two, but I do not think there are many educators on the Board of Education.
And RTM is also, has some power over the budget in terms of the school side as well, right?
Yes, yeah, the RTM does approve budgets oftentimes. The Board of Selectmen is more heavily involved in that, but the RTM is involved as well.
Now, I guess since you mentioned Kevin Kelly, it might be a good time to talk about your other candidates.
Mhm.
We have a sign that has other names on it.
Yes.
So now Deb Kelly is running for RTM as well.
She is. She's running in District 3, which is down in southwestern Waterford. Yeah, she's a very qualified candidate as well.
She is.
She works in the East Lyme school system. A lot of educators, actually, are run from our party. And yeah, she's very qualified. I've known her for a while as well. She's married to Kevin Kelly, obviously. And yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny that, well, maybe it isn't so surprising that a lot of Greens came out of the education field. But now, okay, back to, well, actually, we'll go backward a little and talk a little bit about the origins of the Waterford Green Party, because it wasn't really so long ago that it was formed, and yet you've made kind of
Yeah.
a splash in a short
You've
time.
made tremendous progress in a very short amount of time.
So I know you were involved in the beginnings of it. So why did you feel the need to start a Green Party in Waterford?
Well, you know, a couple of years ago, I was looking at the political climate in Waterford, and I saw a lot of problems that people are beginning to address in this municipal election this year, which is that the same people have been in the same offices over and over and over again. And I began to feel that not only was it time to get some new voices in office, it was time to have new voices in general in the town that were speaking for, you know, very progressive ideas, that were able to look beyond, you know, party identity and really move towards what was the best solution for Waterford as a whole. And, you know, ideologically, I stand with the Green Party 100%. And Josh Kelly, Corinne Esty, they were some of the founders as well. And we started having the meetings, and people seemed really receptive. A lot of people started coming and joining, and the movement just began to grow and grow.
So it was obviously addressing a gap that other people had kind of felt.
Yeah.
And so what kind of activities do you do when you're not knocking on doors?
You want to?
Well, I'm a retired English professor. I still teach part-time evenings off-campus classes. And other than that, I'm spending my time playing guitar and working in the Green Party.
Yeah, that's about what he does. I'm a college student, among other things, in the local area. I'm also one of the founders and the executive director of a startup nonprofit organization, Life Without Borders. I'm a local musician. I've performed around here. I play folk music primarily on several instruments. You know, and in terms of what the Green Party does, aside from elections, I'm very involved, you know, the trash cleanups, you know,
Yeah.
community involvement, that sort of thing.
And you mentioned there are a lot of educators in the Green Party, but there are actually a lot of musicians in the Green
There
Party
are as well. Yeah.
In Waterford and New London and statewide, I think. Now, you've been doing these trash cleanups for a long time.
Yes.
Why trash cleanups?
Because, you know, when you look at the roads in Waterford, you think, you know, how can I contribute to the community? How can we be a visible force, you know, helping to make things better? And, you know, there's a lot of trash on the sides of the roadways. No one else is picking it up. Someone's got to do it. So, and, you know, parks as well. So we get out there, you know, in the summer, generally on the weekends, we get a bunch of people, bags, we just pick it all up. And, you know, people stop and they're very thankful, you know, they thank us.
And this is all connected with our desire as a party for sustainability and preserving the environment. And which brings me to the idea that we want to encourage as much small business growth in the community as we possibly can. It would not only provide jobs, but we could encourage the development of small business by offering tax breaks for people who put in solar
Sure.
energy or geothermal energy.
Yeah, there are a few new homes being built in District 2, actually, that do use geothermal energy and, and sustainable landscaping as well. And for those homes and, people that want to adopt, gardens in on their lawns, that sort of thing, we would call for those people to be given tax breaks, incentives to adopt better infrastructure on their own homes.
And geothermal, I think the technology has gotten a lot better. We
Yes.
have friends who put geothermal in their old Victorian home in New London about, I don't know, maybe a dozen years ago. And they said that right now you can have wells and they can support a whole block.
Yeah.
Not just a single house. So it's a great way to go. And I'm thinking, a lot of the houses in Waterford were built in the 60s and 70s, and the heating systems are starting to get a little old.
Yes.
So as people are thinking about what to replace it with, if you can go solar or geothermal instead of natural gas or sticking with oil, it would help everyone.
Yes. The price of oil just keeps going up, and I think that, it's good for the town when people adopt sustainable practices, and it's good for people's wallets when they do so as well.
Well, oil has gone down recently, but there's no guarantee it'll stay there. But
Yeah, in fact, it's guaranteed that it won't stay
yeah,
there.
it's not
I have
good.
to admit, we purchased today, and I thought, wow,
But
this
it-
is as good as it'll get.
But it still costs hundreds of dollars a month for heating oil in the winter and any kind of environmental energy
Right.
would pay for itself over a relatively short period of time.
Now, you mentioned encouraging small business, and do you see any, not conflict exactly, but does this seem to be kind of a new idea in Waterford, which, with its malls, has appealed to big box stores in the past?
I think that in terms of talking about inviting small businesses to Waterford, it's not a new idea, but in terms of actually taking steps to do so, I think that would be a new action. Leadership is about action. It's not just a position. So, in terms of bringing small businesses into like the new developments that are being proposed in, Mago Point and Jordan, that area,
Right.
that's very important because when we bring in these large chains, oftentimes they're getting tax breaks, so Waterford isn't benefiting as much. And, they're not necessarily employing within Waterford. They aren't paying high wages. And they're not as stable when it comes to employment. So bringing in small businesses to make a community-centered economy is very important.
Yeah, there is, a lot more of a multiplier effect with the dollars staying here when you have a small business. Because yes, in terms of employee, paying more, but also their lawyers are going to be local, their accountants are going to be
Exactly.
local.
It's a ripple effect.
You bring in big chains, and they're artful dodgers. They, for example, will register their cars in another state, so they don't have to pay local
Right.
taxes.
Right.
And small businesses are much less likely to do that kind of thing.
And it's easier to make sure they're accountable.
Yes.
And you mentioned like Jordan Village and Mago Point, which are really places that wouldn't be very appropriate for a big box store
Exactly,
anyway.
exactly.
They're villages.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about creating, kind of a center for Waterford, an area that can draw in tourists and, can attract businesses. And, what's going to draw in tourists and what's going to fit with kind of the scenic atmosphere of that part of Connecticut is small businesses, it's little shops, and that's the sort of thing we really have to make sure that we're focusing on because I support development in those areas. Waterford needs it. We need to bring in a larger tax base, but we need to make sure we're doing so in a sustainable and economically friendly way.
Yeah. And you're right about the tourists. And I tell people, no one comes to New London to see Coleman Street.
Yeah.
There are, there are McDonald's everywhere. It's like it's not going to make or break a destination.
Yeah.
So those scenic pockets in Waterford really would not benefit at all from having just a chain store in them.
No.
Now, okay, so we talked about infrastructure, small business. What else do you want to do in Waterford? Or what else do you want to see discussion of in Waterford?
Well, I think generally what our campaign from the Green Party and what other people's campaigns are really focusing on is kind of what our motto says, which is fresh faces, fresh ideas. The people that have been in office for quite a while, there's within the way they're operating, there's limited transparency, there's limited communication, there's a breakdown of the relationships that you see between not only the various parts of government, but the government and the community. And they keep telling us, we have a great relationship with the community. But that's not what I see. I don't see people that are involved. I don't see accessible websites with information. I don't see people coming to meetings to hear what's being discussed. And I think that our campaigns and a lot of others really want to look at, let's get some new voices in town government, and let's make sure that we're communicating respectfully with all members involved in decisions as well as the community.
Now, what are the boards and commissions in Waterford that people might also be interested in getting involved in?
Yes. There's a Shellfish Commission, comes readily to mind. There's commissions that deal with zoning as well. There's an Economic Development Commission, It's pretty standard things, but through the commissions, if you're interested in getting involved, you can go look at what's available and then see if you can get on one. Anyone can do it. You don't have to be elected. You just have to have some qualifications.
And, we in New London have really encouraged people to get on boards and commissions. Like, you want to register green in New London? Okay, choose a board and commission.
Yeah.
So that we hope to have like one green member on each board or each commission that makes decisions in any kind of significant way, because, as you mentioned, that divergent voice is something that's very lacking in our New England governments for the most part.
Yeah.
Now, you've been campaigning now for a few months. What's the experience been like?
Well, for me, I've found people generally pretty receptive, certainly willing to listen. Occasionally you meet someone who's totally committed to another party, and that's fine, they should be. But I'm really pleased at the general receptivity of the people I've met. We've been going door to door, both of us, and experience has been quite rewarding.
Yeah, I've found people to be very, very receptive. Obviously most people are not registered as Greens in Waterford, but what we're saying, the issues that we're trying to promote, that speaks to a lot of people, because people are frustrated and they are ready for a change in Waterford government. And as I go door to door and I talk to people, I find very few people who don't like what we have to say.
And you mentioned that very few are registered green, which I'm sure is true, but I bet there are a lot who are registered unaffiliated because they're kind of down on the major parties.
Yeah, and those are people that we're trying to speak to as well. The independent voter, the person who's not just going to fill out a straight Republican or Democrat line, the person who's going to look at the candidates and look at what speaks to them.
So does your campaign need help in terms of people volunteering? What kind of jobs can people do if they want to be supportive?
We're always looking for volunteers, especially on election day. We want to have volunteers together to promote the Green Party at the various polling places around Waterford, but also going door to door, just helping with general campaigning. People can find information on our website about how to contact us.
Okay, and we did not put that up there, but is waterfordgreenparty.org?
It is waterfordgreenparty.org. It is on the sign.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad we have it, because we did not type it in. If people want to learn, now I had sent you a message, and I was kind of unhappy to hear that there don't seem to be candidate forums and debates going on for any positions other than the first selectman.
Yeah, I was disappointed to hear that too. I thought that at least a candidate forum would be the bare minimum. That if possibly every position ought to have, but certainly at least the RTM and the Board of Selectmen. But yeah, they're only having a debate for the first selectman position.
So that said, what is the best way for people, in your opinion, to get to know the candidates, not just the Greens, but all the candidates before Election Day?
Well, we're always happy to talk with people. We will come out to your house and, give you a lawn sign and ask you, what you think about the issues. If you want to get in contact with us, our website's the best way to do so. We have emails, we have phone numbers. So, we're very open to having a personal relationship with members of the community.
Absolutely. Yes.
So,
Be glad to talk to anyone.
good. In fact, I have a name for you. There's someone I know who said, oh, they did my neighborhood, but they didn't stop in my house. And
Okay.
I'm pretty sure this individual is probably a registered Republican, and I don't know if, but sometimes it's really surprising that some people are very loyal to their own party, and some really still want to look at the whole candidate and not vote party line. So let's see, what? Now, there have been a few letters to the editor recently in the day, and one of them was specifically about the Waterford Greens. I loved it because the headline just said Greens. And so it kind of, if you didn't read the whole letter, it was about New London Greens as well. But there have been quite a few other letters of people expressing dissatisfaction with the status quo in many different, there was a bamboo issue, and then there was, I think, the transparency.
Yep.
Is there any reason now that you think that might be happening in Waterford? When I lived there, it didn't seem like a very politically active place in any direction.
And Waterford hasn't been very politically active, but over the past few years, there have been issues within the town that have gotten the attention of the public. Issues that could have been handled very differently, from salary issues, employment issues, again, fire department, public safety, even the regional animal control facility is a big issue. And the Green Party, I think, contributed as well to people becoming more active. We've kind of shaken things up, put new voices out there. And it's, everything's really come together for people to be ready for a major change in the town government.
So now Millstone has been a fixture in Waterford for a long time. It probably won't go on forever.
No, it won't.
What would you say, what is your view of what the future is for energy issues in Waterford in terms of Millstone, and also employment, because
Yeah.
they are a big employer?
I'm not exactly sure what the long-term plans are for Millstone, so it's difficult for me to comment on that. But certainly, as a Board of Selectmen or an RTM member, plans ought to be underway to decide what can be done to fill in any gaps left by the closure of the plant or the reduction in employment staff, whatever.
And the loss of taxpayer money. I don't think anyone really knows what Millstone is planning in terms of where it's going, but
And they have a permit to operate for quite a few more years.
Yeah.
But if you look in the long haul,
yes,
it's not going to go on forever.
right. And it's an issue that the town's going to have to deal with, and the state is going to have to deal with as well, because we cannot just lose all those jobs and immediately become economically depressed. Our unemployment level would jump massively. So, part of what we can do now to start preparing for that is to start building small business and building a separate economy within Waterford that's not just dependent upon suburban developments and, a giant nuclear power plant.
Right, and shopping malls.
Right.
Right.
Which I think for a while, the first wave of people starting to think about Millstone being a reduced taxpayer was all those, the shopping mall development on Hartford Road.
Yeah. The type of development that Waterford needs to be doing is moving away from, housing development, so suburban development. There's been a lot of that, and there's talk of more. It's very controversial. And as we look at what's going to happen, if Millstone shuts down eventually, people are going to be moving away from Waterford. Already, you walk around town, there's houses up for sale everywhere, and we're building more and more and more. It's clear that we're not going to develop our tax base by bringing more people into the town. We're going to do so by developing an independent local economy. That's the only way that we're going to help the town become sufficient.
Now, you talked about tax credits, or tax breaks for people who start small businesses, especially in environmentally friendly ways. What specific sorts of businesses, do you think this might attract?
I'm not exactly certain to how to answer that, but I was also thinking when I mentioned it that we could offer tax breaks to residential people as well who put in efficient ways of using water into their property, who had gardens, who, in short, encouraged in their own property sustainable living. And
Yeah, I don't think it's particularly important what type of small business we draw in. It's hard to say what that
Yeah.
would be. But, small shops, creating a tourist area, especially in the Mago Point region to, build off
Right.
of Niantic, I think that'd be incredibly helpful to the Waterford economy. We could do so much with that. It's such an undeveloped area. It's a very picturesque area.
It is.
The environment there is pristine. It'd be a lovely thing to do if we could make sure we do it right.
And it would have to make it kind of a destination
Yes.
because Mago Point suffered a lot when the Niantic Bridge was replaced.
Yes.
I mean, before the current Niantic Bridge, everyone who went from New London to East Lyme, by the back roads, they were there. And there wasn't a lot of industry there, but there were, a solid businesses for restaurants and ice cream shops and, bait and tackle places.
Yeah.
And now, I don't even know when the last time I went to Mago Point was, because you just bypass it all unless it's your destination.
Waterford's a beautiful town. We have a beach, we have Harkness, and we have Mago Point. We have these areas that are just beautiful. They're unique to Waterford, and we could be drawing people in. We could be making money off of these areas. Helping the town become more sustainable economically, and develop more jobs. And we're not doing it. And there have been plans proposed to tie all these things together, but what frightens me is that there doesn't seem to be any emphasis on how we're going to do that and to make it, not
Right.
just another strip mall, because that's not what's going to draw people in.
No, and and strip malls. I don't know if there's been built in the last year or two, but in the last 5 years there have still been new strip malls
Yes.
going up, and some older shopping areas that are not doing so well.
Right.
So if you trade like the commerce from, I don't know where Benny's is to out a little farther, you're not really helping the town much.
Exactly.
Oh, that is, I was just reminded of another resource that Waterford has that was much used in the past, the Seaside Regional Center, and I know that the future plans of that are pretty controversial.
Yes.
And so what is your view on Seaside?
Well, I've been on record for some time as saying that, and believing sincerely that I am opposed to a development similar to Ocean House in Westerly at that site. I don't think the roads could sustain it. I think it would block locals from using the beach. The other kinds of developments, there are a variety of them that might, a park is certainly one, although it would not add to the tax base, and that's one drawback with that. It's been suggested that perhaps elderly housing could be put in there. That's certainly something I would be willing to consider. But of course, the idea of a park is always appealing. It's just the tax base thing that concerns me. So perhaps an alternative that would provide some increase in taxes could be provided.
The state has stepped in with Seaside, which...
Yes, in a very political way,
Yes,
I might add.
yes, in a very political way, which seemed to result in more questions than answers, and even more uncertainty. When it comes to developing any area of land, the people who live around it will be most immediately affected. Their voice needs to be heard. And last year when I was attending the meetings to discuss it, I didn't see those people's voices being heard. Now the state has stepped in. I still don't see those people's voices being heard. It's wonderful to say we want to develop this, we want to develop that, but the people around there are right in saying that those roads can't handle it. It's a residential area. So either we need to accept the reality that to develop that would require serious infrastructure work, which the people around there would not be happy with, understandably, or we need to look at, what are realistic possibilities for the property. Putting in elderly housing would be an option. Obviously any development has to maintain the character of the land and, the character of the community.
Right, and I would hope that the couple of really nice old buildings could be preserved.
Yes.
I know there
That's very
are
important.
probably major asbestos issues and major lead issues, but a few of those buildings are really just spectacular. I think some of the really poor buildings have already been demolished,
Yes.
which is just as well. It seems like most of the people I've heard who live in the community want to keep some kind of access to the beach.
Well, yeah, that's very important. The beach should remain public. All of our coastlines really, in my opinion, should be accessible to the public. That should be public land, especially, such a picturesque area as Seaside. So any development there, the plans that were being proposed and continue to be proposed, they're so diverse. No one really has a concrete plan. Even when developers were coming, they were proposing like 5 different things in the same meeting, and they had lawyers there. And I don't understand why that was considered a professional way to handle the situation. And, moving forward with Seaside, we've got to make sure that Waterford's voice, and that means the voice of the residents,
Right.
not the voice of what the government wants to do, is what's being heard above all else.
Well, I will be watching that in the future because it will need an influx of money to invest in it as a
Yes.
start. And, whether the town or the state are at the forefront, it's, right now it's really too bad. It's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have about 10 minutes left. 7, 8, something like that. So once again, other than like just calling you, are there any specific places where you might be gathering where people can just ask you questions? I mean, this is unfortunately not a live show, so people can't
Yeah.
call in. But are there, some places where they can find out more about you if you don't get to their door?
Well, as I've said before, the website's a wonderful resource for people. We've spent a lot of time making that very accessible. But that we have our headquarters at my house, which is 9 Farmstead Lane. People are welcome to stop by and ask us questions and, get a campaign sign if they're interested. They can, find all sorts of contact information online. We have a Facebook group. We have a Facebook page.
They're welcome to stay and rake leaves, too.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Now, do you have any events coming up that are any cleanup? I know you just did a town hall cleanup recently.
Yeah, we just
correct?
did one recently. We don't have any plans at the moment, but we're, because we're in campaign mode. After the
Yes.
election, we'll start putting together another plan for that.
Community calendar in 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, we have 2 minutes left. And so I just wanted to mention that the New London Greens, this Sunday, October 11th, we are going to be having a park cleanup. We've been inspired by you all, and we've been doing park cleanups. We started, of course, at Riverside Park, and then we went to Bates Woods. And we're doing a park cleanup this Sunday at Green Harbor, which is on Pequot Avenue. It has a beach part and a park part. And it has very interesting stormwater issues. Water drains there from the L&M parking lot across railroad tracks and eventually into the Thames. So we'll pick up trash and talk stormwater and have a cookout. So any last words in your last minute?
Yeah, my last words would be, I really want to re-stress, some of the issues that we're talking about in terms of making the town more sustainable, calling for the creation of a public safety commission, improving education, and just general better planning and new voices and better transparency within town government.
And that says it perfectly, yes.
Okay, and that's part of the Waterford Green Party platform?
Yes.
And I noticed the platform is available online.
Yes.
Profiles of all the candidates are available online, and ways that people can contact you.
Yes.
So thank you, Baird and Billie. Good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you very
Have
much.
fun.
Thank you.
And to all the rest of you, we'll be back with a lot of other candidate interviews from now through Election Day. And then after that, we'll shift gears. Maybe you want to come and talk about your nonprofit at that point. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you on the campaign trail and at Election Day.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, I like this. I was raised down at Fort Trumbull, warm friends and family around me. What's now a blighted neighborhood, overlooking a river to the sea. Soon all that'll be left of it will be nothing but them good old memories. Them parking lots, having an LDC Christmas. Settle me at your house, not mine. Having an LDC Christmas, where I be come Christmas time. I smell lemon eviction coming round to London this Christmas time. It don't smell so good down by that sewer plant. Down before Santa comes to town. They want to build themselves a hotel, but you think they'll spread that wealth around? Now think again. Jody Rell can't even stop them when they come to tear my poor old house down. Oh, here comes the wrecking balls. Having an LDC Christmas. Settle me at your house, not mine. Having an LDC Christmas, where I become Christmas time. I smell an imminent eviction coming down to New London this Christmas time. Oh, Lord have mercy. Oh, no, it's starting to snow. Tell me, where am I gonna go? Here comes the Scrooge, the one to blame. Well, if it isn't Mr. Eminent Domain, he said, boo-hoo, what's the matter with you? Didn't I offer you fair market value? Oh dear, Christmas is near. I thought I saw Santa down on the pier. I'm gonna head down to Bank Street for a shot of beer and have an NLDC Christmas. Have an NLDC Christmas. Yeah, an NLDC Christmas.